Today I'm in Conyers, Georgia, as you can see here behind me. Conyers is a popular Atlanta suburb known for, well, they have the Georgia International Horse Park here, which was used for the 1996 Olympic Games, and they filmed quite a few TV shows and movies here in Conyers, The Dukes of Hazzard being one of them, Vampire Diaries, and a couple of his spin-offs, all kind of stuff. But today I'm here in Conyers because I am tackling a heartbreaking story of two twins, Tasmiyah and Jasmiyah Whitehead, who committed matricide, meaning they killed their mother, who was still young herself when all of this happened. It was a brutal act of violence just because they didn't want to follow her rules and her curfews. As usual, today I'm going to go over to the location where this happened, to their home, and a few other locations, and I'm going to tell this whole story. I'll show you the crime scene photos and the video footage in the sad story that should have never happened when these two twin teenage girls plotted and killed their mother for virtually nothing. This is the death of Nikki Whitehead at the hands of her own children.
Police outside Atlanta have charged two teenagers with murdering their mother. The 16-year-old girls were arrested Friday following a 4-month-long investigation. Their mother was found stabbed to death in January.
Now, this story today is just as much about the twins as it is their mom, Jasmiyah Yvonne Whitehead, the mom of both of the twins. She went by Nikki. Well, she grew up in a troubled home. She was actually born in prison as her mother, Linda Whitehead, was serving a multi-year prison sentence for drugs. While Linda was still locked up, Nikki was born, and as a newborn, Nikki went to stay with her grandmother, whose name was Della Frazier. Then, even after Linda got out of jail, Nikki just stayed and lived with her grandmother. As Nikki grew up, they didn't have a lot of money. They were just like most all of us. They struggled to make ends meet, and they had it tough. As Nikki grew into a teenager, she was pretty much just allowed to do whatever she wanted. She didn't have any kind of rules, and there was no curfew, and she was just able to come and go as she pleased. At the age of 16, Nikki dropped out of school because she was still young herself. She didn't want to go to school anymore. She wanted to go out and party and hang out with her friends. So Nikki left her grandmother's home and she began living on the streets. Just a couple of years after that, Nikki met a young guy and she wound up getting pregnant, and she gave birth to two little girls that were twins named Tasmiyah and Jasmiyah Whitehead, who went by Jazz and Taz. Because Nikki was living on the streets when she had the twins stayed with Nikki's grandmother, who would be the twins' great-grandmother, and Della Frazier just also raised them as well. Now, Nikki noticed that the twins were being raised the exact same way she was. So in the year 2000, Nikki met a 55-year-old truck driver named Robert Head. They began dating when Nikki was 25, and as I said, he was 55, so a good 30 years older than him. And then the girls were 7 at this point. So, like I said, Nikki realized that the twins were being raised the same way, and she remembered how she was raised, and she saw that the twins were headed down the same path. And it was here that she realized that she wanted both of her girls to become better than what she was. So Nikki made the twins come move in with her, and then all three of them, Nikki, Taz, and Jazz, they all three moved in with Robert Head here in Conyers. Them all living together didn't last long, though. The twins began to rebel against their mother, and they became very hard to live with, and very quickly they went right back to live with their great-grandmother again. Now, the twins were honor roll students prior to Nikki moving them to Conyers. They participated in ballet, and they were part of the church choir. So people were actually baffled at how the twins reacted to their mother moving them here. Nikki blamed their rebellion on how the twins were just allowed to get away with whatever they wanted to at their grandmothers or at their great-grandmothers, but they weren't allowed to do that with her. Nikki, she enforced rules, and the twins had a curfew when they were with her, and the twins hated it. For a second time, in an attempt to try to get the girls away from it, in 2007, Nikki, brought them to live with her again, but this time she did it the right way, and she went through the court system to get custody of the twins. Obviously, she was their mom, and she had no problems keeping them, so very easily Nikki was granted custody, and again, the twins moved in with her and Robert here in Conyers. Now, from the first day that the twins moved in with them this time, they were very difficult again, but Nikki tried to hang in there. She tried to get them on track. Nikki started making them go to church on a regular basis, but that didn't work. Nikki tried to take them to family counseling, but that didn't work. And after some time, Nikki even told multiple people that she was trying to find an exorcist to come in and talk to the twins because she said that they were just evil. The girls, the twins, Taz and Jazz and their mother, they would constantly get into arguments and fights where law enforcement was called. The police call logs for the residents over the years, it was multiple pages long, and multiple officers, several of them, they knew Nikki and the twins by name because they interacted so much. One of the 911 calls that I received with this case showed that Nikki called 911 because Jazz snuck out of the house one night to go meet her boyfriend, and then Nikki woke up and realized that she was gone, and Nikki became fearful of what had happened to her or what might happen to her, so Nikki called 911 to report Jazz missing.
Conyers 911, where's your emergency?
Yes, ma'am. I just woke up and my daughter is gone at the house.
Meaning your daughter was abducted?
I don't know, ma'am. I woke up, the door was unlocked and she's gone. I have twin girls. One of them is gone.
How old is your daughter?
Oh, Lord, 13.
In 2008, law enforcement was called out again for a disorderly juvenile call where Tasmiyah and Jasmiyah both had been fighting with their mother, and Taz had actually went into their bedroom, locked the door, and then climbed out of the window and left the home.
Conyers 911, where's
Yes, ma'am. My daughter I just went, I'm outside and she's gone. So her window is open and she's left about the house.
Okay, ma'am, what, are you calling from the Appaloosa Drive?
Yes, ma'am. I'm looking at my door now, ma'am, and she's left. I'm outside and she's ran away, ma'am. She went out the window. Yes, ma'am. One arm left and the other one has barricaded herself in the room and cussing me out.
Window.
Officers arrived here at the house, and Nikki flat out told them that day that she was fed up. She said the twins always ganged up on her and they tried to intimidate her, and Nikki said that they refused to follow her rules, and then if she tried to get onto them, they tried to use physical force to get their way. That night, officers eventually found Taz at a gas station nearby, and they brought her back to the house, and they sat down with both twins and they tried to talk to them. Taz and Jazz then told the officers that they didn't want to live with their mother anymore. They said that their mom didn't let them do anything that they wanted to do, and that she always takes away their phones. The twins flat out told the police officers that night that they believed their mother hated them, and they wanted to go back and live with their great-grandmother again. As the evening progressed, the officers got everyone calmed down and they prepared to leave. The responding officer that night was an Officer Scruggs. Officer Scruggs goes out and she gets in her patrol car and she starts driving down the road, and she doesn't get very far away from the house at all when she hears a loud scream. And she's sitting inside her patrol car and she hears it inside of her car. It's coming from the Whitehead home. So Officer Scruggs immediately turns around and she comes right back to the home, and just as she gets out front, she hears another loud scream and she sees Nikki running out of the front door, yelling that they jumped on me as soon as you left. Then just after Nikki runs out the front door, she sees Taz walking out of the garage area holding her stomach, and then Jazz comes out right after her. Officer Scruggs separated everyone to try to find out what happened, and it turned out that as soon as the officers left, Taz started it right back up again. So Taz says that she's going to go call her great-grandmother to come get her, and Nikki says, "We just settled this," and then she unplugs the phone in the girl's bedroom. She takes the cord into her room, and as she's going into her room, Taz follows her inside of her room and closes the door behind her, and then jumps on her, starts trying to fight her. Nikki said that she managed to get out of the bedroom, and as she gets out of the bedroom, Jazz then jumps in and starts fighting her. She said at one point She tried to leave through the garage area, and both of the girls grabbed her and snatched her back inside, and she screamed for help, and that was the first scream that the officer heard. So now, after they get her back inside, one of the twins holds Nikki down on the floor while the other one starts like beating her in the face. This only lasted a moment before Nikki was able to get free again, and in the process of getting free, she went up scratching Taz's stomach, but Nikki was able to get up, and she made it out the front door, and as soon as she gets out the front door, Officer Scruggs is pulling back up in front of the house. In the police report, it shows that all three women were checked that night for scratches and bruises and things that would indicate a physical altercation, and it's listed in that police report that Jazz had no injuries, Taz had a few cuts and scrapes on her hands and a scratch on her stomach, but then their mother, Nikki, had scratches and bruises all over her body. For the first time throughout this whole ordeal on this night, both Tasmiyah and Jasmiyah Whitehead were arrested and charged with simple battery on Nikki, battery, and being an ungovernable juvenile. And both girls were arrested and put in a police car and then booked into the local youth detention facility. And they were both just put on probation. They had to meet with a probation officer once a month, and then the judge ordered all of them, Nikki, Taz, Jazz, and the great-grandmother, Della Frazier, the judge ordered all of them to go to family counseling. The Whitehead Twins probation officer would later go on the record saying that the family dynamic here was very disconnected on all levels. The twins did not trust their mom, Nikki. Nikki did not trust her grandmother, Della Frazier. And then Della Frazier did not trust her own child, Linda Whitehead, who was Nikki's mom. The probation officer said that all of this dysfunction just led to everyone yelling and screaming over the top of each other, and it meant they got nowhere.
Conyers 911, where's your emergency? The argument and putting hands on each other. You'll be all right. Why are you on the phone? Who phone you on? Get off the phone. Okay. Get off the phone. Thank you.
Just before Christmas in 2009, an incident happened where one of the girls wasn't behaving and Nikki took away their cell phone as a punishment. This resulted in both of the twins ganging up and physically attacking Nikki again. There were punches thrown, and Nikki had to try to fend off both of them, which resulted in her calling the police again. And again, the twins were arrested.
Conyers 911, I got a witness. Take it here. I got a witness. Ma'am. I got a witness. Hello, yes, 911. Ma'am, what's going on there? Yes, my kids are being unruly. No, you do that first. He ain't gonna allow y'all. Ma'am. He ain't gonna allow y'all. Ma'am. No, you ain't getting no phone. No. You ain't gonna use this phone. No, you did do something. Mom, red, stressed up. You finna get up out of here. Ma'am, talk to me. Talk to them. Okay. How many is there? Yes, ma'am. It's too many. It's two of them. Yes, they both 15. They twins. Okay, are they male or female? They females.
So because this happened right at Christmas time, their normal judge who presided over their cases was on vacation for the holidays. So they had an emergency custody hearing, and this on-call judge released the twins and sent them to their great-grandmother's house to live just for the holidays, and just until their normal judge came back from vacation and could see them again. At the end of this hearing, both Taz and Jazz laughed and giggled and mocked Nikki while they were standing in open court in front of the judge, just because they had gotten their way finally. The rehearing for this with their regular judge was scheduled on January the 5th of 2010. And by the end of that hearing, the judge who saw them normally had admonished the twins, telling them that they're going to wind up in jail. And then this judge ordered Taz and Jazz were to go back to Nikki's here in Conyers for one last 2-week trial period to give them all one last chance to get along and live with each other. This time there was no laughing, no playing, no mockery towards Nikki. This time Jazz stood up, she looked at Nikki, and she said out loud, "No, I hate you and I wish you would die." Now, even though she had made this statement right in front of the judge just blew it off as a young teenage girl pitching a hissy fit, not getting her way. So they were still sent home with Nikki. Now, shockingly, during this time after this court hearing, things seemed to get a little bit better. The cops were not called out to their home, not the first time, and there appeared to be no altercations between Taz and Jazz and their mother. On January the 9th of 2010, Nikki was working. She worked right here at this hair salon, Simply Unique Hair Salon in Decatur, Georgia, and she was doing hair for a woman we'll call Blue, okay? Well, Nikki and the twins had been out shopping earlier in the day, so the twins actually came to the salon and they sat in a chair and they were reading books and playing on phones while they waited for Nikki to do Miss Blue's hair. Now, Miss Blue would come forward later on and she would tell police that while Nikki was doing her hair, she heard one of them say out loud, "I hate that B word," and then they both kind of rolled their eyes. Miss Blue said that this stood out to her because she thought to herself, as she's seeing this go down, I wonder what Nikki could have done to make them say something like this about their mother. A couple of days later, on January the 13th of 2010, 8 days after they were sent back to live with their mother by the family court judge, a series of events would take place that would change everyone's lives who was involved. It would change their lives forever, and it would result in Nikki Whitehead being found murdered in her own home. January the 13th of 2010 seemed to start out like any other normal day for everyone. The only exception was that the twins were late to school that morning and they claimed they overslept. They got to school at about 10:30 a.m. and then they were there the rest of the day until school let out that afternoon. A short time after school got out, an officer who was patrolling the neighborhood here, they were actually dropping off papers to a neighbor's house, and they were waiting to get out of the gate when one of the twins ran up to his patrol car, screaming and hollering, banging on the window, claiming that they had just come home from school and they went in their house and they found their mother dead. Both of the twins said off the gate that they had no clue what happened. They had just come home from school and found her. Immediately, this officer went to try to enter the home to check on Nikki. But as soon as he opened the front door, he could immediately see blood all over the living room. And that smell, that copper iron smell of blood, he said it smacked him in the face when he tried to walk in. So he immediately knew something bad had happened. The initial responding officer called for backup at this point. He put both of the twins in the back of his police car, and they waited for other officers to arrive before they actually went into the house. Once more officers showed up, law enforcement made entry into the home, and the officers very carefully searched the home, going room by room, down the hallway and into the master bathroom. And in the bathtub of that master bathroom, they discovered the badly beaten remains of Nikki Whitehead. She had been beaten over and over and over with a blunt force object or multiple blunt force objects, and she had been stabbed more than 80 different times. It was a horrendous scene that caused blood trails to be left all over the house and blood everywhere, and it looked like something out of a horror movie. The initial responding officers put in his report that Jazz and Taz seemed distraught, but they also almost immediately started noticing that the twins started acting weird, and they both said some weird stuff. As the twins were being brought into the police station out of nowhere, Jazz just started biting her arm, like to the point where she was drawing blood, like she just, and she told them that she bites her arm like that when she's nervous. At one point, an EMT who was checking out Jasmiyah said that he noticed a scratch on her arm, and that when he started trying to clean the scratch, Jazz made the statement, "Stupid scratch. They're going to blame this whole thing on me because of a stupid scratch."
Stupid scratch. You blame this whole thing on me over the scratch. Never came along until I think I did.
Investigators who were processing the scene inside of the home, they started finding evidence inside of the home that also raised some eyebrows. The officers here in the home started finding clothing items that had blood on them, but they were in places that they shouldn't be. For example, in Nikki's bedroom, there was no blood anywhere, but In Nikki's closet, they found a few pieces of clothing that were covered in blood that had been tossed in the closet floor. Then, in the twins' room, again, there was no blood anywhere, but in their closet, they found a shoebox, and in the shoebox had a pair of shoes inside of it, and there was a giant blood spot on the shoes. And then even worse, inside of one of the shoes, they found some tissue, toilet tissue, that had been balled up, and inside of that ball of toilet tissue, they found a giant clump of hair. When they took it all the way out, they discovered that it was a clump of hair that had been ripped out of one of the twins' heads. During the search of Taz and Jazz's room, law enforcement finds probably the most damning piece of evidence of all when they uncovered a hidden notebook that it was apparent both of the twins had been writing in. And it appeared to be like where one twin would write something and then she would hand it to the other one, and she would write something and then they would hand it back and forth, and that way they could write stuff down without anyone hearing what they were saying to each other. But in these notes inside of the notebook, it was the twins detailing plans to kill their mother. Very, very early on in this case, law enforcement believed that they knew what had went down. They just had to prove it. So both twins are taken from their house and they're brought down to police headquarters. At first, they were kept together in the same room while they told their story. The girls said that their mom came in that morning to wake them up, but they were late and they missed the bus, so they had to walk to school that morning. Both girls said that they were only a few minutes late to school and they were there all day. Then after school, they arrived home and they found the home in the shape it was, and they immediately went looking for their mom and they found her in the bathtub. The twins tell the investigators that Nikki had been going out to bars and clubs every night, getting drunk and meeting men. The twins tell them that Nikki had been dating two men at the same time, and that just recently both of the men had found out about each other and it had created some issues. They also said that the night before, which would have been a Tuesday night, they said their mother had gone out clubbing, and when she came home, she was very intoxicated, and they overheard her arguing with someone on the phone. As the evening progressed, law enforcement not only goes to talk to these two men, one of which was Robert Head, Nikki's boyfriend, who owned the house that they were living in, and then the other guy was, well, he actually owned the barber shop, which was right next to Nikki's hair salon. And the guy that owned the barbershop actually told law enforcement that he was in a relationship with Nikki as well. And he told them that 2 nights before, Nikki had been with him at his house, and she had told him that she was pregnant and that she was debating on whether to keep this baby or not. But then he tells him that that it was probably a lie that she was telling him, because they had been kind of separating because this guy had found out about Robert Head. So he thinks that she just said that to try to keep him around. After looking into Robert and this other man, both of the men were very quickly ruled out as suspects, and neither one of them had even been in Conyers the day that Nikki died. Detectives interviewed multiple people who were close to Nikki and the twins. When asked who they thought could have done this, an alarming amount of them said that Jazz and Taz would be the only ones. And at least 3 of the people that the detectives interviewed just flat out said that Nikki told them, if anything happens to me, the twins did it.
She talked to me and she was just saying, Yucca, it's going down. And I said, what do you mean by that? She was like, I'm just telling you, if anything happens to you, girl. She was like, the kids did. And I was like, Nikki, we're not going to talk like that.
As time passes, the girls are just sitting at the police station. They're waiting for their great-grandmother to get there, Della Frazier. She was at her home when the police called, and then she told law enforcement that she was going to have to borrow gas money from someone before she could even get there. So while they're looking into the men and they're going over the crime scene, they also start trying to retrace the steps that the twins took throughout that morning. Up until this point, no one has treated the twins like they're suspects. They're treating the twins like they legitimately just found their mom dead. So officers originally decide to just leave both of the girls sitting in the room by themselves, and then they leave the cameras going just to see what each of them would say to each other.
I'm afraid. I'm afraid. I'm afraid. Right. Oh, my grandma. Oh, my mama.
You want something to drink? What you like to drink? Water or Coke or something?
Water. Oh, Grandma. Be okay. Oh, Grandma. We'll be okay. No, it's not. He's not gonna come back.
Eventually, detectives returned to the room and they tell the girls that, this whole thing is going to take some time to sort through. And they tell the girls what's going on with their great-grandmother, that she was trying to borrow gas money to get there. And they ask the twins if there's anything that they can do for them. And both of the girls look at each other for a moment, and then they turn back to the detective and they say, "Can we watch TV?" All right. So the detectives turn on the TV, and CSI was on. The girls vocally, as soon as it comes on, they vocally say, "Well, we've already seen this episode, but leave it here. We love this show." This was a big point that detectives had in their notes that they marked down, and I'm guessing they thought there was something to this, because they made sure to kind of highlight this point in their supplemental reports for this investigation. Shortly thereafter, all of this happened, detectives start getting the surveillance footage back from the girls' high school and the other places that they were trying to get it from, and they start realizing that a lot of the story that both of the girls had told them about what happened that morning was all lies. The girls said they walked to school because they missed the bus, but they said they still made it to school just a few minutes late, and they were in all of their classes all day. But the security camera footage that they recovered from a gas station shows that the girls actually didn't walk to school. They actually walked to this gas station, and then they hitched a ride in a red Dodge Avenger, and this red Dodge Avenger took them to school. And then the girls didn't arrive just a few minutes late like they said. They actually didn't get to school until about 10:30, several hours late. Armed with this new evidence, the police, being able to say, "You're lying to me about something, that means you'll lie to me about a bunch of stuff." So armed with this new information, detectives separate both of the two girls into different rooms, and they just let them sit there again for a little while just to see what they'll do and what they'll say and how they'll act. Very quickly, detectives start noticing that being apart from one another seems to be wearing down on both of the twins. At one point, you can see Taz look directly up at the security camera, and as soon as she knows it's there now, and then she puts on an award-winning performance for the camera.
Too much. So I'll bite myself. Can't eat. Mom's dead. And I really want them to catch this person.
And then Jazz, she never looks up at the camera, but you can tell she's cracking under the pressure.
Why y'all talking to us like that? Y'all, what are you talking about? Like questioning us like that. What are you talking about, Dan? Like asking us all the questions like we did it or something. I mean, these are questions going to be asking you regardless. Everybody's asking questions because they're trying to figure out what's going on. It's not to accuse nobody of nothing, but this is just normal procedure. But we were at school all day. We were at school all day. They can pull a record and see we were at school. Jazz, nobody's saying you did something. Nobody's saying that. We're not even, I don't know why you keep saying that. Because y'all make it seem, and you're going to be sad about it. You got to worry about yourself.
Now, as detectives are sitting down and they're watching the cameras, they see Taz. She gets up like she's going to get some food, and you can see her stop in her tracks. She notices a scratch on her hand, and her demeanor just completely changes. After she notices the scratch, you see her try to cover it up, and she sits down and messes with it to try to hide it. Because of this, they send in a detective to look at both of the girls' arms and see where all of the scratches are before they can get rid of anything or try to hide it.
No, I'm just checking to see. So
You pull your, it's just procedure since you're in there. I need to see your hands and your arms. Pull your things off. What happened here?
I got into a fight.
Did you get in a fight with him? When?
Yesterday.
Y'all fight?
Yeah, we didn't get along yesterday.
Pull your sleeves on up. You know what I'm saying?
Finally, after a couple of hours, the great-grandmother, Della Frazier, arrives at the Conyers police station. Detectives sit down and talk to her, and Della tells the investigators that Nikki just wasn't fit to be a mother, that's why she fought with Nikki to get custody of the twins. Della tells them that Nikki lives a dangerous life. She said Nikki was always out at bars and clubs and that she was hanging around with different guys all the time. But as the interview goes along, Della also tells detectives that she didn't think she could handle the twins anymore, but that she didn't want to give up the extra stuff that she got. Like, she got extra money and food stamps and checks from the government and insurance and all this stuff because the twins were living with her, and she didn't want to give all that stuff up. As it got late into the evening, the girls had not confessed to anything, and at this point law enforcement only had circumstantial evidence to prove that they had done anything at all. So with detectives wanting more concrete evidence, they actually allow the girls to leave that night with their great-grandmother while they continued to investigate. A couple of days later, the twins actually rubbed a lot of their family members the wrong way at Nikki's funeral. After Nikki's burial service was over, a few family members, including Robert, had come directly into the Conyers PD station, and they told detectives that during Nikki's service at her burial site, the twins spent the entire service with their boyfriends laughing and giggling. Now, this infuriated a lot of the people that was at the service, and the twins' uncle went up and confronted them about it after the service was over. He was telling them that they were being disrespectful to their mother, and then the twins and their boyfriends began shouting and cursing at the uncle and a few of the other family members who came up with him, yelling that their mother did nothing but disrespect them, and they got into a big fight. And this led to the cops being called out to the burial service once again for one last altercation between Nikki and the twins. No one was arrested, but Robert Head and a couple of other people left directly from Nikki's burial site, and they drove straight to the Conyers PD to tell the detectives what had happened and to tell them that this doesn't seem right.
And your name was Robert Head?
Robert L. Head. But now they change it. They can switch from mad to happy. They're just like that. They can act too. Good liars. Like at night when she go to bed, she have to lock the door, keep from coming in because she didn't know what they would do. You know, so.
For the next 4 months after this, nothing really happened. Both of the girls just lived a normal life. They go to school, they hang out with their friends as if nothing happened. They even go dress shopping, and then they go to their high school prom with their boyfriends, like I said, as if nothing had happened. This 4-month time period also installed a false sense of security in both of the twins. They thought that they had gotten away with this. But during this 4-month police investigation, the twins were actually called into the police department multiple times for interviews. One of the times, both of the girls had their blood drawn for DNA, and then they even sketched the outline of the girls' feet to match them up against footprints that were left in the house. But each time they were called in, they got to leave and they got to go back to their great-grandmother's house, and things would go back to normal. The twins didn't know, though, that This whole time, law enforcement was not only testing the blood samples and investigating behind the scenes and quietly building their case, but they were also watching the girls. In May of 2010, which like I said, it's about 4 months after Nikki's murder, all of the test results start coming back from the lab. And it took so long because they were trying to decipher what blood in the house belonged to the girls, to the twins, and what blood belonged to Nikki. But as all of these test results come in to the detectives, they get a vital clue from the autopsy that would finally give the detectives the evidence that they needed to arrest both girls. Now, you remember earlier when I said that Jazz started biting her arm and she told the officers it was a nervous twitch? Well, law enforcement had paramedics actually swab that area of her arm the day of Nikki's death, and those test results came back showing 2 sets of DNA in that spot on Jazz's arm, which could only mean that during the fight that day, Nikki had bitten Jazz on the arm, and then Jazz tried to cover it up by biting over the same exact place that Nikki had bit. Armed with this piece of evidence, officers now had enough probable cause to make an arrest. So on the last day of school before summer break, and remember I said that detectives had the girls under surveillance, so they knew exactly where they were at. Well, one group of officers show up at Della Frazier's house, the great-grandmother's home, and Tasmiyah, who didn't go to school that last day, was arrested and placed in handcuffs, put in the back of the patrol car, and then another set of officers go over to Tucker High School that last day, and Jazz was arrested right in front of everybody inside of the school, and she was placed into custody and charged with felony murder and aggravated assault. The officers actually went in and arrested her and then brought her out, and they were waiting on a transport patrol unit to pull up, and that's the dash camera that I got, so you can see them as they're pulling in to load her up. After both of the girls were in custody, detectives had one more trick up their sleeves, and both groups, with the girls in the back of patrol cars, they drove to a Target parking lot, and they put both of the twins in the back of the same car, and then they stood outside in a big group, but they walked far enough away where they thought that the twins would think, they wouldn't be able to hear what the twins said. But it was on purpose, because unbeknownst to the twins, they left the dash cameras in the patrol cars running so they could hear everything that both girls said. And of course they said some crazy stuff.
There wasn't damn a bite mark. Yeah, they said they cast mama teeth on my arm, and her teeth matched my arm. But what was the name say? Teeth mark? Yeah, ain't accurate, period. And then they said that our blood was found in places that our blood had been found in with her blood. And all of my clothes in her room and our room. Oh, what? All of her clothes in our room and her room. And they said both our blood was found in her blood. I mean, they probably don't plan all type of shit right now. I don't trust none of this shit. I don't. I really don't.
Both Tasmiyah and Jasmiyah Whitehead would actually go to jail without bail this day, and they would spend 4 years behind bars just awaiting their trial. They unbelievably stayed quiet the whole time. Della Frazier, their great-grandmother, got them attorneys, and they were getting ready to fight the murder charges. But just as their trial was coming near, the prosecution went to them with a plea deal. If they pled guilty to voluntary manslaughter, providing false statements to law enforcement, and possession of a knife during a crime, and then they confessed to what actually happened that day, the prosecution would offer them just 30 years in prison, meaning they would be free again one day. But the prosecutors tell them, if you don't take the deal and you go to trial for felony murder and aggravated assault, they had enough evidence that they would be able to get life in prison without parole, and they would never get out. They couldn't get a death penalty because they were minors, so it had to be life without parole. Surprisingly, it took no time, and I mean real quick, both twins took the deals that they were being offered, and then they were brought back into the district attorney's office, and they confessed to what actually happened. Taz and Jazz said it all started that morning when their mom came in their room to wake them up for school. They didn't want to get up, and after Nikki tried multiple times to get them up, eventually the twins say they just lost it and they jumped up and they started fighting with their mom. Both twins attacked Nikki, and besides using their fists to hit and their feet to kick Nikki, they began hitting her in the head with a vase that they picked up from the living room. They used pots and pans from the kitchen to beat her. They picked up a pair of boots off the floor in the living room and they beat her with those. And the twins said they had a medal hanging on the wall from a childhood achievement that they had gotten. They ripped it off the wall and they used the ribbon part of that medal to choke Nikki. Both twins said they grabbed whatever they could and used it as a weapon against their mom. At some point during the fight, Jasmiyah grabs Nikki from behind, like she wraps her arm around Nikki's throat. Jazz is holding Nikki, and Taz is hitting Nikki in the head with the kitchen pot. Nikki's bleeding everywhere, and they say that somehow Nikki gets the strength and she bites Jazz on the arm as hard as she can, forcing Jazz to release her grip around Nikki's throat. And once Jazz lets go, they say that Nikki tried to get away. She made a run for the front door. Amazingly, Nikki apparently made it outside, and she runs right over to a neighbor's house where she bangs on this neighbor's front door and mashes on his front doorbell. But Nikki, she didn't have any time to waste, so she kind of rang the doorbell and the door didn't immediately pop open, so she left. She starts heading over to the neighbor on the opposite side's house, and as she gets out in front of her home, Jazz and Taz actually were able to grab her by her hair and they dragged her back inside of her home. And it's here that both girls grab knives off of the kitchen counter and they begin stabbing Nikki to death, just inches away from her front door. After Nikki quit fighting back and the twins believed that she was dead, they drug her through the house, from the living room, down the hallway, and into the master bathroom, and then they put her in the bathtub and then filled it up with water. The twins told the investigators that their mother's last words were, "I hate you, and you're going to jail," and then Jazz responded to her, "I'm sorry."
What's she say?
She hated us. She hated us, and I don't know, I guess the same thing, we're going to jail.
But what are you saying to her?
I'm sorry. I told her I was sorry. Not just sorry for the day, but I'm sorry for everything. We couldn't get along and stuff.
The twins say that after they put Nikki in the bathtub, they then tried to clean up a little by hiding some of the bloody clothes and the bloody shoes that they had used, and they tried to hide the knife that they had used. They even threw one of the blades, it was like a box cutter type blade, down a storm drain outside. Both girls then, they went and showered in their bathtub and they cleaned the blood off of themselves, and then they got dressed and ready, and then they carefully hopscotched over the puddles of blood that were in the living room carpet, and they exit the front door, and then they start walking towards school, and then they hitch the ride at the gas station. But then they lied about what time they arrived, so the cops thought that they had an alibi. Now, as I usually do, I will upload all of this interrogation footage, and I can put up the footage, the dash camera footage of their arrest, and the whole conversation they had in the back seat of the patrol car. None of this stuff is like online in its entirety, so I doubt any one of you have seen the full videos or anything. So I will put all this stuff up online. I'll probably just put it all up at one time instead of uploading it, a day apart or whatever. And then I'll maybe make a playlist. That way, if you want to go through it, you can. And if you don't want to go through it, you can skip it and catch the next upload. But that way I can also move forward. It'll all be up, so I don't have to keep focusing on it, and I can move forward with my next topic. But either way, I'll have all of this up on my channel in the coming days if you want to watch it all. It's quite interesting to see in its entirety. Now, after taking their plea deals, both Taz and Jazz were sentenced to their 30 years, and then they were separated by the judge that sentenced them.
I just want to say I'm sorry for all that has happened and all the pain that's caused my family and because I'm really most important the mom.
So Tasmiyah Whitehead is currently serving her sentence at Arundel State Prison, and then Jasmiyah is serving her sentence at Pulaski State Prison. Both twins are scheduled to be released in May of 2040, meaning both girls will be about 47 to 50 years old when they get out. And actually, I read that Jazz has actually seemingly turned things around while she's been behind bars. I read that she completed high school in prison and she earned her diploma. She even had a graduation, and her great-grandmother was there sitting on the front row cheering her on. Afterwards, I read that she went on to take several more educational programs, and she's gone on to actually become a leader in her prison, and seems like she's become a different person. I haven't heard that much about Taz, but I did read that about Jazz. Their great-grandmother, she, supported the twins throughout this whole process. She got them lawyers during the trial phase, and then after they were sentenced, she visited them both and has been there for everything that they've had going on ever since. This whole situation, it stemmed from teenagers being teenagers and wanting to do what they wanted to do, because at their great-grandmother's they were allowed to do whatever they wanted to do, and they were allowed to just come and go freely. But then Nikki tried to break the cycle, and she tried to be there for the twins and do the right thing and set rules and set boundaries for them. She didn't want the girls to end up pregnant at a young age like she did, and she didn't want them to be running the streets and get arrested and have all these problems. But she just waited too long in the girls' lives to start trying to reinforce some discipline, and she was ultimately killed because she wanted her twin baby girls to be on the straight and narrow path and succeed in life. It's such a shame that it had to happen the way it did. I've been working on this video for a long time now, and it was quite the hassle because the Conyers PD sent me a box of DVDs, but somehow the files were corrupted and they wouldn't play, and I went back and forth with the Conyers PD for months, and then finally the Conyers PD sent me a software program that allowed me to review the evidence. But then it wasn't like just having a file. It only played through this evidence player, so then I had to figure out a way to be able to save the footage, to be able to use it in my video, so it's been a hassle. I've been dealing with this one particular video done for probably a good year now, and finally, just here recently, all the pieces came together and I was able to view all of the evidence and see all of the stuff. So that's going to do it for this video today from here in Conyers, Georgia. I want to thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you're new here, go down, hit that subscribe button, then hit that notification bell so you get notified every time I upload a video. Thank you all. I will see you again in the next one. Please, all of you, stay safe and stay healthy. Much love to you all.